Oh, we get a countdown as well.
Oh, I do. Well, hello everybody, and welcome again to an all-new Animal Behavior Chats. My name is Neil Hutchins Resto, aka the Treat of Introducing Miss Danielle Beck. Love
Hello.
Miss Danielle Beck. For all of you that don't know, Miss Danielle Beck and I, along with a wonderful team of content creators, admin a group on Facebook called Positive Pet Advice, where we like to answer all your comments, questions, concerns, give you some wonderful resources in our overall professional opinion. So today we wanted to go ahead and jumpstart a few things here with Miss Morag Heirs on some deaf dogs. I am so friggin' excited for this interview. Miss Danny, do we have our links and
Hi.
everything up? Are we good to go?
I'm just posting pet advice. Yeah, everything's good to go.
Yay!
Yeah.
Let's get going because I know we don't have very long today with Miss Morag, but I would love to talk her ear off. So go ahead and introduce us and let's get started.
Okay. So for those that don't know Morag, she is an animal behaviorist and a trainer. Fantastic at both of them. And she not only trains, but she lives with deaf dogs, and one's half blind. Is it blind?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I love Morag's passion enthusiasm, which is why I wanted to come on the show to explain that a lot of times when people have deaf dogs or blind dogs, they put a lot of limits on the dogs. It's like, well, I can't do this because they're deaf, or I can't do that because they're blind. They're limited by us, not by themselves. If you give them the option, it's amazing what these dogs can do. So hopefully Morag can give us a little bit of insight into the amazing work that she can do and how you can actually train some deaf dogs. So Morag, feel free to have a chat. What are the most common things that you find that people have deaf dogs that they worry about that they can't do with their dogs?
Hello. So I do behavior advice for other trainers and behaviorists, but primarily for the Deaf Dog Network, which is a UK-based support group, although we have members all around the world. And the most common questions that we get are usually from people who are new to having a deaf dog, but they already have a hearing dog or they've had a dog before. So they feel like they can't communicate in the way that they would normally. So they'll ask us questions like, how do I teach my dog to go out to toilet? Because I can't say, go pee when I open the door. Or how do I teach my dog not to jump on the counter because I can't tell them no? And honestly, that makes my heart sing, because what they're going to learn is that talking is about the least useful thing you can do when you're training a dog or pretty much any animal. And also the thing I really like to emphasize is that I live with 2 deaf dogs, and it has never been necessary to teach them a no signal or to wag my finger at them to tell them off. In fact, it's the exact opposite. And as positive rewards-based trainers, we're pretty hot on that stuff anyway. But the lovely thing when you have a deaf dog is you have the perfectly good logical reason, which is you want your dogs to trust your hands, to look at them for information, and to want to pay attention to them, right?
Yeah.
So in what world would you ever want those hands to be something that might tell them off or scare them or worry them? It just doesn't make sense.
No, not at all.
So that tends to work pretty well in encouraging people to move away from the needing a signal for no. Because obviously the signal itself doesn't make any bloody difference, and you don't really want to be worrying about teaching a no bad dog, because why would you do that? Mostly it's about doing good normal dog training and being a little bit creative and putting a signal in, a hand sign that you can be consistent with.
Okay.
But what we see from those newbie owners is that they want to know what other people use, as though there is some magic in doing that to get them to do a toilet rather than
like this.
Rather than that or whatever it is. And you're like, the magic is not the hand sign. The magic is in the training, and that's no different for a deaf dog than it is for anybody else.
Yeah. One thing I love about working with deaf dogs is when you've got, especially if you're in classes and you have a deaf dog in there and you've got other clients that are like shouting and putting all this information into their dogs, and the dog's not listening. It's like, they're not listening to me. I'm like, well, it's like, they don't have to listen to you. They are very visually orientated. I was like, what would you do if your dog was deaf? And you would just use your hand signals and your body language. And there's loads of kind of tools that people recommend for deaf dogs. I'm going to go for the one that is really obvious that I'm sure you probably hate talking about, but I have to, which are the vibrating collars. Because everyone's like, well, the dog can't hear you, so how else do you get its attention? It's like, if you have a thing that vibrates, then they know that.
Yeah, and in theory, the thing is, in theory, it sounds like a good idea, and
Yeah.
I've seen people who use spray collars in the same way. I'm not saying you should. I'm just it'll come up when people are talking about this, so we need to be honest about it.
Exactly.
I also know people who use e-collars, so actual shock collars
same
in the
ones,
States on a very low setting because they say it won't hurt. I'm dubious about that personally.
Yeah.
But if you think about the vibrate collars, and even to some extent like the odorless spray collars, and they'll turn it down so it's spraying down the way rather than up into their face. So they're trying really hard not to make it unpleasant. But the idea is that they assume that the deaf dog will be not paying attention to you. So you need a way of kind of tapping on the back of the shoulder and going, oi, did you remember about me?
Yeah.
And firstly, that's actually contrary to how we would generally train a deaf dog. So our first principle is to teach them to find us. So to regularly, we call it a check-in, and there's like a whole series of articles in the Pet Professional Guild, Barks from the Guild e-magazine that goes through it in detail if people want information on how to train it.
Okay.
But by concentrating on teaching the dog that it's worthwhile making the effort to find and check in with us, you have an easy way of then calling them back with a hand signal every minute to minute and a half because they're looking at you.
Yeah, so it's, I'm
you
assuming
don't,
that
you
way
don't
you
need
kind of build up
something.
a dog that is pottering around and like every so often they will just naturally look back at you. So you
And
have
the
the
thing
opportunity
is,
to do something then rather than having to go,
and you
"Oh,
can tell them
dog."
what you want to do. Absolutely. And most deaf dogs will generally make visual eye contact with their humans way more often than hearing dogs because they have no other way of knowing where you are. And it's usually important to them to check that they have not mislaid their humans because people wander off and don't tell them where they're going.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the other thing is that if you rely on that vibration collar or something, the timing isn't always brilliant. Most of them aren't waterproof. The waterproof ones are really expensive. And actually a hell of a lot of dogs don't like them. And they were originally devised to be used as an unpleasant training tool. So the original idea behind them, and it's on, like if you see most of even the vibration only collars, it says on them that they're to be used to stop dogs barking and stuff. So they're not designed to feel pleasant. And a lot of dogs will find them, they'll either ignore them pointedly or they'll get panicky.
So if you do the training that you recommend, then it would be safe to have your deaf dog off lead, depending on the situation that you're in. Obviously,
absolutely.
Would you put a belt or anything onto the dog?
Sorry, was Neil asking a question there?
Yeah, I was just saying, one thing I would like to point out too is for everyone that is listening in on this specific part of the question currently on e-collars and everything like that, the positive reinforcement-based dog training, or the dog training that all of us use primarily, has been around longer than these collars have been manufactured. It's very important to remember that.
Absolutely. We've been successfully managing deaf dogs for years without using this technology.
It also looks like we have a question, Danny.
We have a couple of questions. I'm going to answer Nate's questions in a minute.
I love live questions.
I know. So people in chat that's asking if is there any particular breed that has like the worst kind of hearing problems? Do you see particular breeds more for deafness than others?
That is an excellent question. I'm just going to grab my notes because
we've got notes. And the other one,
you have notes and statistics. You know what I'm like, Danny.
I do. We are dealing with a doctor here.
To all of your stats that you share today.
What was that?
Can I get
links
for all the stats that you share?
Yeah, of course you can. Absolutely.
And is there any really common causes of hearing problems? Are these dogs that are born deaf, or are they kind of dogs that have had accidents or illnesses?
The problem is that, as always, the data is a bit rubbish. The data is quite sparse. We have more information on dogs that are born deaf who are specific breeds because it's been a breed-specific problem. The most commonly affected breed is still generally the Dalmatian, and that's in America, UK, and in Europe. And you're looking at between 18 to 20%, or up as far as 29% of Dalmatians are born with hearing impairment in the States.
Oh, wow.
Bearing in mind that that's still happening when the majority of those breed associations' stated official position is that any deaf dog should be euthanized at birth. As soon as you recognize they're deaf. Yeah, because they were dangerous to be rehomed. They've now taken that off their website after quite a lot of campaigning. that I've been involved with.
Yeah.
But it's still very much the tendency for a breeder is that if they find out they have deaf puppies, they were very much encouraged to just take them to vets and have them euthanized.
Surely it should be a neutering policy, not a euthanasia.
But their claim is that deaf dogs will startle and be aggressive on wakening, that they are unsafe and they can never enjoy full quality of life. All of which I would point out are A, wrong, and
Yeah.
B, not backed up by the evidence. So there's been one decent study that compared the prevalence of various behavioral problems in deaf or vision impaired dogs versus normal dogs.
Yeah.
And they came out as being more likely to bark, shock horror for anybody that lives with the dog. Yep, we know that deaf dogs bark a lot, but they were less likely to have aggression problems, and they were more likely to have experienced rewards-based training.
Yeah.
So other breeds that are pretty common are bull terriers, English setters, English cocker spaniels, Australian cattle dogs, border collies, Jack Russells or terriers. The thing that I haven't got data on, but I see it myself in rescue and on the Deaf Dog Network, is Staffordshire Bull Terriers and American Bulldogs in the UK more and more commonly because people breed for the pretty white colour.
A lot of Australian shepherds here in the US.
Yeah, and it's dogs, particularly where they have the merle. They carry the merle in their genetics.
Yeah.
And then if we're breeding that too closely or we're getting the wrong combination, you're basically guaranteed to get a proportion of dogs who have some level of hearing impairment.
Okay.
And in those dogs, they're basically at the point where their ear is developing around about week 3-ish, week 4-ish. The little sensitive hairs in the inner cochlear either don't develop or they start and then they die off.
Okay.
So you can tell from that early age. And then the other chunk is obviously dogs who are getting older, who've maybe had ear surgery or chronic wax buildup or infections. And we don't really know how many of them have hearing problems because, to be honest, I mean, the data isn't good, but also people don't notice. Like they genuinely don't notice when their dog goes deaf because they accommodate so well.
Yeah, and dogs are so kind of habitual and they're very routine based that they know roughly what's going to happen anyway.
Yeah, so you have no idea even that their hearing and their vision is mostly gone and be like, oh, but we're still going the same walks, it's fine. Yeah, they can do those in the dark though with their eyes closed.
Exactly, they've still got a nose.
Absolutely, they have.
It's like they daredevil the way around the place because they can just smell how far away things are. And I think people underestimate. We're going to go into nose and scent work stuff a lot next week with Morag. But the way that the air travels and stuff is dogs can literally smell there's a wall there because the wind will change.
Yeah, and they learn a lot of the patterns.
Yeah.
So, and we may use some examples next week, but Bronte obviously has very limited sight in one eye and none in the other. And my colleague Claire's dog Beano is completely deaf and blind. And they both have the same sort of slightly adventurous attitude, which is, it'll be fine if I run at it because the worst that happens is I bounce and I try again. Pretty resilient.
Yeah. Oh, there's a question asking if dogs have more sensitive hearing than humans. And is it the hairs that increase the sensitivity, or is it just the way that the ears are
the short answer is hell yes. The slightly longer and more technical answer is that the ear anatomy is different from ours. It's basically the same, but it's more sensitive and it's better. And what we know is that dogs basically hear a much wider range of noises. Yeah. So they can hear lower sounds and higigher pitches than we can. And
that like the silent dog whistles.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we don't know if they work because we can't hear them. Some dogs listen, others don't.
And that amount, that sensitivity, those different noises is going to vary for sure according to different dogs. So I can hear some noises that Claire can't hear. Some dogs might hear those silent whistles, other dogs actually can't. And that's the downside. You never really know what noise they're making. But also it means that for some breeds, their hearing means that some noises are actually painful. So we think that's one of the problems with noise phobias, is that actually the sounds are painful to the dog's ears.
This is the problem with live is my child has returned early.
Hello.
I got the bumblebee.
You've got Bumblebee. Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
just a bumblebee.
It's okay. I have a dog chewing in the background. So.
It's the same thing, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with deaf dogs, it's like or even with blind dogs, can you like direct them to do like the dog sports like agility or fly ball? And I know you do rally obedience anyway. But how are they at those kind of sports? Do you find that they excel at them? Or
for scent work, yes, absolutely. Actually, my best dog at scent work is Bronte, who's deaf and part blind, and that's because she doesn't rely on her eyes.
On any other stimulation?
No. Hi, Kitty.
I will release Bumblebee.
About the only sport that deaf dogs are really going to struggle with is things like working trials in the later stages. And that's simply because you need to cue your dog while you're not in line of sight.
Okay, so
because I looked at it, I played around with some of the training. It was like, yep, we're doing great until we get to things like, the 6-foot scale. And I meant to leave my dog in a sit, walk away and call her. I can't. She can't see me.
She can't, yeah.
What do you think of me?
Awesome.
What?
So one thing that's really cool too, I give this to clients every once in a while with deaf and blind, is to put an unburned scented candle and make sure that each room has a different candle of its own that has a different scent, and the dogs learn the rooms.
Ooh.
On,
I love that face. We've got debate.
Give me some feedback here. What are you?
So firstly, I think it's overcomplicating things.
Okay.
And secondly, each of those rooms has their own smell. I guarantee you. And your dog would get on better if we didn't complicate the picture, because if the bottom line with dog sense of smell is if we can smell it, they absolutely can. If we can't smell it, they probably still can smell it pretty good.
Yeah. So would you be against where people kind of put like a lavender smell on corners so the dogs are aware?
Yes. I think it's a shitty idea. I'm really sorry to swear.
No,
the thing is,
it's fine. That's what we like.
So it's your house, right? So you've got warmth, you've got central heating, so that evaporates the scent off. It takes the scent picture up, it spreads through the air and diffuses. It blends with everything else. So what you basically end up with is your dog going, wow, it just smells of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it seems like that would be like a very kind of overwhelming sort of sense for a dog that has such a powerful nose anyway, to put these essential oils all through the house, combined with the makeup and deodorants and the food smells and the cleaning smells that are already in each of the
different Febreze and God only knows what else.
It must be very much an overwhelming sense.
And the thing is, your house smells different to my house in the nicest possible way.
Reese, just give me a second, because can you see here? You're live on the YouTube right now.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
See? There you are. And so is everyone else. So you need to be real quiet for a little bit.
Do we have any more questions, Danny?
Nate has asked if dogs can smell fear.
Generally, yes, in the sense that they can smell the biochemical changes in your body when you're under stress or you're anxious. It's not going to make a difference whether they're deaf or not. To be honest, that's a generic dog thing. But then how they respond to it, they're not necessarily going to think in their head, oh, that's fear. What they might get is a sympathetic nervous response where their body goes, I'm aware and sensing stress chemicals and stress hormones, and it starts to generate them in their own body. I don't think they necessarily think, oh, that person's fearful, I should react in some way.
Yeah. So before you go, because I know you've got to skedaddle off and we've started a bit late and things.
I'm sorry, by the way.
We can redo it, it's fine.
Sorry to the fans and everyone who was waiting too. Guys, I got stuck in traffic this morning.
Yeah, Neil got stuck in traffic, so we've overrun. But would you have any kind of take-home messages? What are like if you could tell anyone that's got a deaf dog or is about to get a deaf dog, what would be the most important things to kind of start off straight away with teaching that dog?
Rewarding eye contact and communication. Don't nag the dog to look at you, but make sure you pay them with a little piece of food every time you catch them paying attention to you.
Okay.
Be the first thing. And the second thing is to have them on a safely fitted harness and a trailing long line pretty much at all times.
Okay.
Not because you're necessarily going to need it, but it'll save you from the heart-rending terror as your dog suddenly finds the gap in the fence. Having once had my deaf dog when she was 9 months old, apparently found a gap I didn't know was there because she's much smaller than my other collies. Yeah. And she'd gone into my next door neighbor's house and was asleep upstairs on their landing, perfectly happy. But I couldn't call her. So I was going around shouting, going, has anybody seen my dog? And they're like, can't you just shout her? No, I can't.
Oh, she's dead.
And in that case, having bells on her would have made no difference, because the problem is she was curled up asleep, having a
Yeah, she
lovely
was
time.
asleep. Yeah.
So,
So maybe
yeah,
like a tracking collar or something.
yeah, and you can get GPS tracking collars that some people use. So harness and long line rewarding any kind of eye contact at all. And basically, unless you're damn sure you know what you're doing, go and invest in a good trainer and get face-to-face help or get Skype help.
Yeah.
Because it's even more important that you don't make mistakes at the beginning.
Yeah.
So that your dog thinks you are a good source of information, that they can trust you.
Absolutely. And for
if
anyone
you want-
watching, Morag does do Skype calls.
I do deaf dog specific Skype calls, and there's a webinar at I think it's the 25th of May or something,
Okay.
that I'm doing for the PPG, with lots of video examples of how we adapt dog sports for deaf
Oh,
dogs.
wonderful. Send us the link and I'll pop them in the YouTube comments below.
I will do.
Remember too, everyone, we've been talking about puppy development and a few other things the past couple of weeks that we've gotten together. It's really, really awesome to point out too that the advice Morag just gave, you can use that with your regular puppy too.
It's no different.
Dog
Yeah.
that you're adopting into the house the first couple weeks. You're getting used to everything. Acknowledge that, that eye contact. Keep them as close as possible. Try to reward the fact of, if they stay nice and close, you're gonna get good things. It keeps them from running away. It helps build that recall. These are all amazing tools that we can use no matter the species. And I really do appreciate the fact that we got to sit down and go over some of these things with you today, Maura.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
very much.
It was short, concise, and got to the point.
Absolutely.
Morag is joining us again next week. We're going to go over some scent work things. But if anyone has any questions about today that they haven't had a chance to put through, or if you're watching this recorded later on, feel free to put comments below. Send us a message in one of the live chat groups or on Pots of Pet Advice page, and I'm sure Morag will be happy to answer the questions before we start on scent work.
If you'd like to connect with
Next week.
Morag, you can catch her on Twitter at Connected Canine, and she's also got her website, wellconnectedcanine.co.uk. For all of you who don't follow Miss Danielle Beck yet, go follow her. Join Positive Pet Advice. Go ahead and hashtag that geeky dog trainer. My name is Neil Hutchins Resto, aka the Treat Fairy. Treat Fairy out.